Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thomas's world had always been a whirlwind of ambition, charm, and frequently reckless opinions, but nothing in his experience could have prepared him for the moment Daphne stepped into his office at Forrester Creations with that look on her face, the bone. That made his stomach drop. Her eyes were wide, slightly teary, and her hands quivered as if carrying a weight too heavy for her to bear alone. Thomas artificially rose from his president, concern stropping his features. "Daphne, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. That was the thing about Daphne, no matter how involved effects came around them at Forrester, she had this way of softening him, of making the world decelerate down just enough for him to pay attention. But the look in her eyes wasn't the bone he'd ever seen ahead. It was one of raw, unsettling verity. Daphne took a deep breath and also another, as if steadying herself against the riffle of words she was about to unleash. "Thomas, there's commodity you need to know about the baby," she said, her voice breaking just slightly, betraying the fear she was trying to mask. Thomas felt a bite run down his chine. He stopped, mid-step toward her, and artificially tried to read her expression. His mind contended. Was this good news? Bad news? Commodity that would destroy him? The veritably allowed. That commodity as particular, as intimate as a child could enter their lives and turn everything upside down, transferred a jolt of fear through him. Daphne's lips quivered as she continued. I need to be honest with you. I didn't know how to tell you, and I should have said commodity sooner, but I was spooked. Alarmed, actually. Her voice faltered and Thomas reached out, artificially, wanting to hold her, to base her. But she took a half-step back, shaking her head. "Daphne, just tell me. Whatever it is I need to know," Thomas said, his tone firmer now, a mix of despair and command. He'd lived his life with so numerous secrets, manipulated so numerous trueness for the sake of control, but this was different. This involved a life, a bitsy mortal life, and he demanded to know if he'd any part in it. Daphne's hands gripped the sides of her sweater, twisting the fabric as though it could ever contain her jitters. "Thomas, the baby, it might not be yours." The words hit Thomas like a punch to the gut. For a moment the room sounded to spin, and the edges of his vision blurred. He wanted to laugh, to roar, to call her insane, but nothing came out. "Not mine," he eventually managed to brute, unbelief threading his voice. "How, what do you mean, not mine?" I allowed. He swallowed hard. He'd allowed. It was theirs. That ever, in the chaos and the complicated mess of the once many months, they had set up a connection that was real. But now everything was unmoored. Daphne's voice was pulsing, nearly a tale. I don't know for sure. I allowed. It was, but after some tests She broke off, the admission too heavy, too opprobrious. Thomas's mind reeled, trying to fill in the blanks. Tests? What kind of tests? His palpitation was pounding, adrenaline making his casket feel tight. "Daphne, stay. What tests?" His voice rose slightly, a blend of fear and rising wrathfulness. He demanded clarity, demanded data, demanded a concrete answer before the walls of his precisely constructed life came worsening down around him. Daphne swallowed hard, gashes hanging to slip. "I went to see a croaker. Intimately. I wanted to be sure before I told anyone. I know I should have told you first, and I'm so sorry. But Thomas, the baby might not be yours. I don't know who the father is for certain." The words echoed in Thomas's mind. His heart was a shower of unbelief, and his hands tensed into fists at his sides. The world sounded surreal, the office walls closing in on him. He could feel his knees hanging to buckle, and yet he'd to stay standing, had to stay present. For all his life, Thomas had brazen falsehoods, treason, family backstabbings, and commercial sabotage, but this was raw. This was particular in a way nothing differently ever had been. "Not mine, Daphne. Are you saying there's someone differently?" His voice was coarse, choking on the fear and wrathfulness and heartache that was submerging him all at formerly. Daphne jounced, gashes discovering down her cheeks. "I don't know how it happened. I don't indeed know who to believe, but there's a possibility Thomas the First wasn't fully faithful. And I didn't realize until now. I had to tell you." Her concession hung heavy in the air, A storm of guilt and fear and shame all wrapped in those words. Thomas felt as if the bottom had been ripped out from under him. Every instinct, every scheme, every manipulation he'd ever learned now sounded pointless. He'd imagined holding this child, guiding it, loving it as his own. But now that entire vision was uncertain, precarious. He wanted to yell, to throw commodity, to demand answers, but he also wanted to collapse and cry like he had done in times. Daphne, I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice slightly above a tail. I aloud. We were erecting commodity real. Commodity solid. And now he traced off, unfit to finish. I know, Daphne said vocally, her hand reaching out, pulsing toward him. I know I've ruined everything or perhaps just complicated it. But I couldn't keep this from you. I had to be honest, Thomas. Indeed, if it hurts. Indeed, if it destroys everything between us, you earn the verity. Thomas looked at her, really looked at her. And for a moment he saw not the girl who had entered Forrester Creations so timidly months agone, but a woman scuffling with choices, with consequences, with fear and love and despair all tangled together. His casket pained, not just with heartache but with commodity differently. Commodity familiar. Responsibility. And perhaps still love. He took a deep breath, trying to undergird the whirlwind inside him. Okay, he eventually said, his voice quieter, nearly abnegated. Okay, we deal with this. Together. No matter what. We find out everything. And also we figure out what happens coming. Daphne's eyes widened in relief, a shaky smile breaking through the gashes. You really mean that? I mean it, Thomas said, and for the first time since she had dropped the stunner, he felt a small fluttering sense of control return. They didn't know the answers yet, but at least they would face them together. At least they wouldn't be alone in this mess. Still, as Daphne moved closer, tentatively reaching for his hand, Thomas's mind contended with the positive questions. Who could the father be? How could this be? Was their relationship strong enough to survive this disclosure? Could he indeed love a child that might not be biologically his? And maybe most sorrowfully, could he forgive Daphne for keeping this secret so long? The office felt unbearably quiet, except for the sound of their breathing, the faint hum of the air exertion, and the distant megacity noise outside. Everything in Thomas's life had been about appearances, about strategy, about control. But this was untouchable by any plan, any scheme. This was life itself, raw and messy and intimidating. Daphne looked at him, searching his face for some kind of consolation, some sign that he wouldn't leave, that he wouldn't abandon her in this storm. And Thomas wanted to give her that consolation. He wanted to tell her that no matter what, he'd fight for her, fight for them, fight for the possibility that ever, despite the query, they could survive this. But the verity was, he didn't know if he could. Not yet. All he knew was that this was only the morning. That questions, secrets, and trueness were about to explode around them like a campfire. That his precisely structured life, his intentions, his unborn plans, all of it was now subject to the chaos of a single life-changing disclosure. And nearly deep outside, he felt the first stitch of commodity he hadn't allowed himself in time's sweat. Fear of loss, fear of heartache, fear of the unknown. And yet intertwined with that fear was a stubborn spark of stopgap. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, love, real, messy, complicated love, could survive indeed this. Thomas eventually exhaled, letting the pressure in his shoulders ease slightly. He reached out sluggishly and took Daphne's hands in his. We'll figure it out, he said again, softer this time, further determined. Together. No matter what it takes. We'll find out the verity, and also we face it. All of it. I promise. Daphne jounced, gashes discovering freely now, but this time mixed with a flicker of relief. For a brief moment in that small, quiet office at Forrester Creations, the chaos outdoors didn't matter. They had each other. And perhaps that was enough to start. The days that followed Daphne's concession were some of the most surreal Thomas had ever endured. He tried to concentrate on his work, on the endless demands of Forrester Creations, but every sketch, every meeting, every decision was shadowed by that one question: is this baby really mine? He'd always flattered himself on being in control, on manipulating situations to his advantage, but this was different. This wasn't about business deals or commercial maneuvering. This was intimate, particular, endless. and no quantum of charm or planning could fix it. Daphne, for her part, sounded caught between relief and guilt. She was trying to continue her work at the plant, to maintain her normal meter, but Thomas could see the strain in her eyes. Each time she walked into a room, her way were reluctant, as if the air itself reminded her of the secret she had just revealed. One autumn, Thomas set up her alone in the design room, gaping at a pile of fabrics with a look that was more away than reflective. He approached sluggishly, not wanting to startle her, though the pressure in the air was palpable. "Daphne," he began, and she looked up incontinently, her eyes wide. "Thomas," she said vocally, nearly a tale. He studied her for a moment, also sat on the edge of the large drafting table across from her. I suppose we need to talk about what comes next. We can't just ignore this. Pretending everything is normal won't make it go down." Daphne jounced, smelling her lower lip. "I know. I've been trying to figure it out in my head. Trying to anticipate your response, Thomas. But I can't. I need your tolerance. And your honesty. Please." Thomas leaned back, rubbing his tabernacles. He wanted to scream, to throw commodity, to demand answers, but he knew that wouldn't help. What he demanded were data, substantiation, truth. And yet indeed with clarity, the verity could break them piecemeal. "We need to know for sure," he said eventually, his voice tight. "No hypotheticals. No stopgap disguised as certainty. We go to the croaker. We run every test, every analysis until we've answers. I need to know what we're really dealing with. And you need to promise me honesty. Absolute honesty." Daphne exhaled shakily, a small nod admitting his words. "I promise," she said, and for a moment Thomas believed her fully. The coming day they listed a private discussion with Dr. Campbell, a specialist known for discretion and delicacy. The waiting room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air exertion and the faint equivocation of papers. Thomas's hands were clasped tightly in his stage, knuckles white, while Daphne's fritters nervously twisted the verge of her sweater. When the croaker eventually entered, a warm, calm presence, Daphne gripped Thomas's hand artificially, as though resting herself in his reality. Dr. Campbell smiled kindly at both of them. "I understand this is a sensitive matter," she said gently, "but we'll do everything we can to give clarity." Thomas jounced, his jaw tight. "We just need the verity. No sugarcoating. No hypotheticals. Please." The croaker jounced. "Of course. I'll need a many tests, including a maternity check if that's what you're seeking. The process is straightforward, but I understand it can feel inviting." Daphne squeezed Thomas's hand, her eyes glistering with gashes. I just want to know. I need to know for the baby, for us, for everything." Thomas felt a stitch in his casket. He wanted to assure her, to tell her it would be okay, but the verity was, he didn't know if it would. All he could do was nod and trust the process, hoping that whatever the results, they could survive it together. Over the coming many days, the pressure in the Forester services was palpable. Thomas tried to maintain his countenance, but those who knew him could see the subtle cracks forming. Indeed, Ridge noticed it during a design review, raising an eyebrow when Thomas's typically scrupulous notes were scribbled with odd, distracted lines. Meanwhile, Daphne sounded to float between fear and stopgap. She commended in her closest musketeers, who prompted her to be honest with Thomas at every step and not to carry the burden alone. Each discussion only boosted the emotional roller coaster. She loved Thomas, that much was certain, but the query of the baby's maternity had created a fragile, nearly unsupportable pressure between them. One evening, Thomas and Daphne met at a quiet cafe, seeking a semblance of normality amidst the chaos. The dim lighting and soft music did little to soothe Thomas's restless mind. "Thomas," Daphne began, her voice tentative, "I've been allowing about what you said. About honesty and clarity. I realized commodity. No matter what happens, I need to be fully veracious. I can't let fear mandate my choices presently. Not with you. Not with this baby." Thomas took a deep breath, studying her. "Daphne, I need you to understand commodity too. This isn't just about me. It's about responsibility, about love, about everything we've erected together, and everything we hope to make. If the baby is mine, I'll love it. I'll cover it. But if it's not, I need to know how we do. Actually, fully. Daphne jounced, swallowing hard. I understand. And I'm ready for that. Indeed if it's scary. Indeed if it changes everything. The croaker called them the following week with the results. The clinic had asked them to come in person for the final discussion, to avoid any misconstructions or miscalculations. Thomas and Daphne arrived together, hands clasped tightly, both tense beyond measure. Campbell saluted them warmly and steered them into a private discussion room. I've the results, she began, opening the brochure precisely. And I want to bandy them with you both directly. Thomas felt his stomach knot. Daphne's grip on his hand tensed. He wanted to reach across the table and tell her it would be okay. But they both knew that the coming many moments would define their lives. The tests indicate Dr. Campbell broke, icing she had their full attention. The baby is yours, Thomas. You're the father. The words hit him like a surge. Relief, joy, and unbelief all collided, leaving him shortly speechless. He looked at Daphne, who was blubbing. Quietly, a blend of relief and inviting emotion submerging her features. Thomas, it's really yours, she rumored, burying her face in her hands. Thomas reached across the table and lifted her chin gently, his eyes locking with hers. It's ours, he said vocally, a smile breaking across his face despite the pressure that had shadowed them for weeks. It really is. We did it. We survived this. Daphne leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, both of them allowing the moment to soak into their bones. The query, the fear, the endless insomniac nights, they were all behind them now. Or so they hoped. But in the world of the Forresters, peace was always transitory. Thomas knew that soon questions from family, from Ridge, from Steffi would face. Rumors would swirl. The delicate balance they had just achieved could be disintegrated in a moment. And yet, in that moment, none of it signified. What signified was that the verity was eventually out, that they could face it together. The relief was palpable, but Thomas's mind was formerly calculating the coming way. He'd cover this child, this life that had formerly come a part of him indeed before he knew for sure. He'd support Daphne, guide her and love her through every challenge that lay ahead. And he'd ensure that no outside force could ever come between them again. As they left the clinic hand in hand, Thomas felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in times. Yes, the world outdoors would continue to be complicated, messy and full of conspiracy. But within the bond he participated with Daphne and their child, there was a verity that couldn't be shaken. And for Thomas Forrester, that was enough to eventually feel whole. Indeed, after the relief of the maternity evidence, Thomas couldn't entirely shake the moping anxiety. It wasn't doubt about the child presently, he knew that with certainty, but it was the world around them. Forrester Creations thrived on drama as much as design, and secrets, indeed resolved bones, had a way of chancing new life. Every regard from a coworker, every rumored comment in the hallway, made him hyper-aware that their particular lives were no way completely private. Daphne tasted his pressure and reached for his hand as they walked back to their apartment. Thomas breathed. We've the verity now. That's what matters. I know, he said, but his voice was quieter, nearly vulnerable. It's not just about the verity. It's about what comes next. About Ridge, Steffi, everyone differently. They're going to have questions. Opinions. Perhaps indeed judgments. Daphne stopped and looked up at him, eyes glistering. Also, we face it together. Whatever comes, Thomas. You and me. And the baby. He wanted to believe her, wanted to cleave to that stopgap, and he did. But part of him remained conservative, the part that had learned, frequently sorrowfully, that in the Forrester world, happiness was always temporary. He allowed himself a small smile, however, a rare moment of tender-heartedness. You're right. Together. Always. That night, as they sat side by side on the settee, Thomas rested his hand gently over Daphne's growing belly. The reality of the baby, formerly so uncertain, now felt real, palpable, and full of possibility. I can't believe it, he muttered. It's really ours. I can't stay to meet them. Daphne leaned her head against his shoulder, a soft shriek escaping her. Me neither. I've been so spooked, but now I feel ready. For us, for this life. Thomas kissed her forepart, feeling a blend of relief, love, and determination. Whatever comes, we cover this. No bone, no circumstance will ever take this down from us. Not Ridge, not anyone differently. This is ours. For the first time in weeks, Thomas allowed himself to hope. Not just for the baby, but for a future with Daphne that was directed on secrets or fear. They had faced query, heartache, and mistrustfulness, and come out stronger. And in the quiet of that evening, girdled by the soft gleam of the megacity lights, Thomas eventually felt commodity he had allowed himself in time's peace.